just a simple man, a train. Why you, with all the rulers in the world? Why you, inside this stable filled with pain? Why you, she's just an ordinary girl. Second guess what angels have to say, but this is such a strange way to save the such a strange way to save the world. This is such a strange way, such a strange way, a strange way to save the
everybody. How are you all today? All right. Merry pre-Christmas to you all. I'm just so excited. I know there's not snow on the ground, and unless there is a significant Christmas miracle, I looked at the temperatures today. It's not going to happen anytime soon. Like I said, unless there's a big Christmas miracle, it doesn't look like we're going to have a white Christmas. But that's not what Christmas is about anyway. So I'm really excited about this week. The Christmas Eve service is coming up, and what do you say we stand up and let's sing out. We're actually going to start out. We were hoping more kids were going to be. Usually there are lots of kids here today. We're going to start out with I'm a Believer. So my kids are here, so you guys can at least sing out. But we all know this song too, so sing out with us. 1, 2, 3, 4. The kids did it as part of their Christmas program, so we thought we'd throw it in there one more time since we already knew that one. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. the middle of our musical set. So I want to take a couple minutes, greet each other, and then stay standing, and we'll keep singing. When we think of like the miracle of what Jesus was here on earth, we think a lot about the death and resurrection of Jesus. But it's I just kind of had it in my head this week, just wondering what it was like to be Jesus here on earth as a child, and just the humility that was in that, and the humbleness that came with our God coming to earth. God came to earth for us. And what that took for our deity, for our creator, the being that created us and created the universe, what that took for him to say, I'm going to come down to earth. I'm going to do that so that I can save everyone. And so that's what I'm thinking of this Christmas season. What it was like for Jesus to come down here to earth and to be born to a human being, and just what that took. And he's so much above that, but yet he was willing to come down to earth and do that. This alabaster jar is all I have of worth. I break it at your feet, Lord. It's less than you deserve. You're far more beautiful, more precious than the oil. The sum of my desires and the fullness of my joy. Like you spilled your blood, I spill my heart as an offering to my King. Here I am, take me as an offering. Here I am, giving every heartbeat for your glory. Take me. This time that I have left is all I have of worth. I lay it at your feet, Lord. It's less than you deserve. And though I've little strength, and though my days are few, you gave your life for me, so I will live my life for you. Like you spilled your blood, I spill my heart as an offering to my King. Here I am, take me as an offering. Here I am, giving every heartbeat for your glory. Take me. Please be seated as we transition into prayer time.
Time for us to join together in prayer. Just like to know, what are the things that we are thinking about, praying about? Who are the people we're remembering today? Anybody we hold up? Yeah.
My friend Cassie, the dad was diagnosed with cancer 2 years ago,
Yes.
and it's not looking good. And he starts smelling feet, and he'll be getting a report put in on the 24th. So just prayers for them. Her brother is intending to do Marine, and they gave him 4 weeks off to come home to spend time with the family because his heart is bad.
All right. Well, let's keep Cassie's family in our prayers, and of course Cassie's dad, as they face this big challenge. Who else are we thinking about today? Others? Yeah.
We've been praying for my niece who had cancer, and been through common colors, and praying for the
Let's keep her in our prayers and the whole family in the midst of that. Yeah. What else?
They had an issue with the insurance. His son, dad, church that he was in, said he would take up the total, what was the pay that for the insurance, and that was really appropriate, but so the insurance, we got the insurance going and going on. This is a young couple, just getting started, just a year, about 3 years married.
Wow. Let's remember them in the midst of that, as well as other people that face medical problems and financial problems all at the same time, because that's a double whammo that is hard to kind of fathom. Thanks for holding that all up in our prayers. Who else do we think about today? Others? I know that yesterday there was let's see, got to get my days right. Actually, on Friday night there was a terrible pileup on 131, and I had a couple of friends in that, and they are okay. Their car was beat up pretty good, but I'm grateful they're doing all right. I think 50 cars were in the accident. It was pretty rough, and I was actually headed to a wedding off 100 miles from here, and it turned out, some of you know I swim every morning, and I looked up at the wedding. I was part of the wedding, and there are a couple of my lifeguards there at the wedding, and I thought, gosh, they feel like they got to watch over me wherever I go, So it was neat to see people, that you run into, you don't expect to see in such different places. But I was glad the musician who was the person in the car accident was fine and his family was okay. Others that we hold up today. Anybody else we're remembering? Yes.
I just want to share that United Methodist Church absolutely rocked their American Red Cross blood drive this past week. Because of the holidays, their meat is high, but they set a modest goal of 28. We had 38.
Yeah, it's great.
Church and our community church is a great safe place for people who want to come in. And so thank you to all the volunteers who helped, and we'll be here on February 9th doing it again.
What a great time it was, too. You gave blood and they gave me soup. I kind of replaced it with chicken noodle. And I think that was a good trade-off for me. I don't know how you guys like chicken noodle, but there was also chili, if that's a better choice. But what a thoughtful thing you all did to try to help us out as we were donors. So, who else are we thinking about? Others do we hold up? Others we're remembering? Yes.
my brother's father passed away 2 days ago.
Yeah, this, again, at time of holiday, it sometimes compounds what it is we're dealing with, and it does have the timing where people are coming together, and that support means absolutely everything in the midst of loss, so I hope the family is really there for each other at this time. Anything else that we're remembering? Anything else that we're holding up that we want to? Yes. Oh, gosh. And you guys have been through that, too. You're just getting over that pneumonia. You had that pretty rough, didn't you? And when these little ones or the elderly ones have it, we really worry extra, I think. And, let me see. That's beautiful. I'm getting a look at her picture she's showing me here. You're doing great. Oh, my. Anything else that we hold up in prayer? Let's come together and pray. Gracious God, we bear around with us so many concerns and worries and busyness and all the things that are on our hearts and on our minds. And Lord, as we come to this place and we gather with these people, we ask that you would remind us that you are always with us, just as we have our friends and our church family. You are there. You are there for us in so many important ways, and particularly at this time of year, Lord, when we're reminded that you entered our world in such an amazing way that it has changed everything ever since. Lord, we pray for those who are traveling over the days ahead, and for those who are celebrating various ways and various places, Lord, that your presence will be felt. We pray for those who are ill. We pray for those who are facing the kinds of challenges that are hard for us to appreciate and understand. To celebrate a holiday in the midst of a war-torn region, or in the midst of disease, in the midst of famine. Lord, hear our prayers. Lord, hear our prayers. Amen. Kids now? Yeah, kids. Come on down, you guys. Come on down. Somebody have Stanley today? I'm not seeing Stanley. Stanley's upstairs. Nobody took him home? All right, well, that's all right. Come on down anyway. You get to come even if Stanley's not here. So for those of you that are visitors or new to us, Stanley is a box that the kids take home every week, and then they bring something back that belongs to them, and we talk about it a little bit here because, you know, part of what our goal is for these guys to feel, come on down. You can come down and join us. Yeah. You want to bring your picture down? Get your picture and bring it to me so I can see it. Part of our goal is to help kids feel like this place, as big and imposing as it is, that this place belongs to them. Can I see it up close? I would love to see it. Bring it down here. Yeah. Can I see it? You did such a good job coloring that. We're going to do this as slow as we can. Can you hold it from there maybe and show me? We don't know. It's kind of like the little girl that one day I was walking past her and I says, "Give me 5." And I held my hand out and she says, "I only have 3 for you today." And I'm sure that little kid, she's going to be in charge of her world all into the future. Can I see what you've drawn? Oh, my goodness sake, you have worked on this. This is a picture of like a bedroom, isn't it? Yeah, that's really cool. You have the lamp painted, and you've got a guitar here, a musical instrument. It is really cool. Thanks for showing that to me. Well, I want to find out if you have any favorite Christmas carols. Does anybody have a favorite Christmas carol? Do you guys know Christmas songs? Do you have one like Frosty the Snowman or anything like that? Or maybe even anybody have a favorite? Anybody have a favorite? What are your favorite? What's that? Mary, did you know? Oh, cool. Any others?
Oh, Holy Night.
Oh, Holy Night. Oh, yeah, that's a cool one, too.
Jingle bells.
Oh, there you go. Do you guys like Jingle Bells? These are. Silent Night. Oh, yeah. Oh, The Little Drummer Boy. That's a great one, too. How about this one? Oh, Little Town of Bethlehem. Today, we're going to talk about Bethlehem. Now, have you ever heard about Bethlehem? Have you? Do you think that Bethlehem was a big place, or was it a small little, tiny little town? You got it. You're right on. It's a small town. It probably had somewhere around 200 to 400 people, smaller than our little town here. And it was not a fancy town. It was a very simple town along a wall that had been built hundreds of years before, and this wall that the town was built along was already starting to kind of crack and break and look kind of dilapidated. And it was in this town of Bethlehem that something happened that we celebrate this time of year. Can you think of what that is? What happened in Bethlehem? Can we think of it? Can anybody else think of it? Oh, Jesus was born. Yeah, we got it. Yeah, so my crew is really quiet up here today. That's all right. But we're going to talk more about the importance. What's that? You just had an insight. I can see your eyes light up. Yeah, no, you forgot it already. No? Okay. Well, Bethlehem, though it was small, and though it was kind of worn out and old, it became a very important place because it was in that simple little town in the middle of nowhere that Jesus was born. We're gonna celebrate that in the days ahead, and hopefully in the days even beyond that. And today I'll speak with the moms and dads. You guys are going to be off doing some other things, but I want you to talk with them in the days ahead about Bethlehem, little town of Bethlehem, and we'll go from there. So let's have a prayer together. Lord, for these young ones, we have such a high value in helping them to know that this place belongs to them, because we know that it's from them that oftentimes we learn the greatest lessons in life. Just continue to teach us. In your name we pray. Amen. All righty. Thanks for coming down, you guys.
All right. Well, since Nick and Kim are gone this week, I'm going to kind of take over the announcement portion. And I really only have two announcements that we have. Do we have the clipboards, Pastor Phil?
Oh, they should be in the pew someplace. Let me look for them.
Yeah, let's do that. Pastor Phil is looking for the clipboards to sign up to help the luminaries. The church puts out on Christmas Eve luminaries, and those all need to be placed out before the 7 o'clock service and picked up after the 11 o'clock. And if I remember from first service, there are lots of people signed up to pick up, but there were few as of the beginning of second service to put out. So I was going to be passing around those clipboards, and if anybody's available to help put the luminaries out, all you got to do is put these little candles in a jar and turn them on, and hopefully it won't be raining like it was last year.
That's right. They're little LED lights, so they're not like we have to light every one of them, but it really adds a nice sense down our street here so that the folks that are driving by know that something really interesting is happening here. And I know Bob did 2 years ago. He won't be able to do it this year because of the weather, but he created the coolest ice candle thing that was like, yay big around and hollow, and he had a candle in it, and it was stunning. I can't wait till we can do that again. We tried it last year, but it was, again, above freezing. But then this year we're not looking towards anything better. But this is our way of doing it. We'll do it with LED lights instead.
Yeah, just on a personal note, before we were a part of this church, I remember driving past the church on Christmas Eve and seeing those jars out there with the candles, and I thought that was a really cool thing. So somebody who's not involved in the church was noticing that. That was cool. And speaking of Christmas Eve services, we have a 7 o'clock service and an 11 o'clock service. And I would encourage you to invite people who maybe aren't involved in any kind of church, to come on out and join us, and just have a time, a moment of reflection, of remembering what Christmas is really about as we go into that special day. So 7 o'clock and 11 o'clock, and I believe those are really the only two announcements that we have going on, the big ones going on. And there are a few other little ones in your bulletin as well. Maddie is going to share our scripture this morning with us.
In those days, a decree went out from the Emperor Augustus that all the world should be registered. This was the first registration, and was taken while Quirinius was governor of Syria. All went to their own towns to be registered. Joseph also went from the town of Nazareth in Galilee to Judea, to the city of David called Bethlehem, because he was descended from the house and family of David. He went to be registered with Mary, to whom he was engaged and who was expecting a child. While they were there, the time came for her to deliver her child. And she gave birth to her firstborn son, and wrapped him in bands of cloth, and laid him in a manger, because there was no place for them in the inn.
Thank you, Madeline. I don't know if you check the bulletin out ever and check the title out, but some of you do, I know, and you may have already noticed the title of today's message, 80 miles. Well, so you understand, it's about 80 miles from Nazareth to Bethlehem. When we jump into the story today, we're about 80 miles from Christmas. The town of Nazareth is situated on the most southern range of the lower hills that are referred to as the southern ridges of Lebanon near Mount Tabor. We don't really have a biblical record of the route that Joseph and Mary traveled from Nazareth down to Bethlehem, or exactly how long it took them. But we can speculate and we can imagine, from what we do know, something about what this trip might have been like. The emperor had issued a royal decree that there'd be a census across the whole land. Now this would help that they would get all the men registered for the draft into the army, and it would also collect the names so that they could deal with taxes. Now, the Jews didn't have to serve in the Roman army, but they did have to pay taxes. So the government forced Joseph and the other men to make a trip into the direction of the town from their lineage. And in Joseph's case, he had to make a trip from Nazareth to Bethlehem, because that was the house of his lineage, his ancestry, connected to David. The kind of strange thing, or kind of puzzling thing, as we look at this story, is that this was a necessary trip for Joseph, but it was a totally unnecessary trip in one sense for Mary. Here she is, ready to give birth. It sounds like in that particular day and age, when the difficulty of this travel, this journey, was very clear. We have no questions about how hard this is going to be. Why in the world would Joseph take Mary along on this trip as well? Because you see, Joseph had to go. They only counted the men. They didn't count the women. And so she really didn't have to make the journey. So why were they doing this? What was Joseph thinking when they set out together? What would cause him to take Mary in this condition? Many of us know something of the story that kind of leads up to this moment. She's expecting. They're not what we would consider married yet. They're engaged. She is expecting a child, and if we've read the story, we kind of remember that an angel appeared to her, an angel appeared to him. You know, they've got dreams. They know that something pretty fantastic is up, but I'm reminded that not everybody got this message. And so here they are in this kind of difficult position, expecting a child, and they're not quite married yet. So what does that do in a small town? You ever hung out in a small town? And you might have some idea of what that might be like. I can only imagine the gossip that might erupt. I can imagine some whispers that are going on. I can imagine a little bit of finger pointing. She's the one, or he's the one. I can begin to understand why a good man wouldn't want to leave Mary to face this all by herself, or want her to face an impending birth all by herself. He's required to make this trip. She's going to give birth pretty quick here. And I would think a good man would want to be with her in those times. And so their unlikely journey ends up fulfilling a prophecy in Micah 5:2. But you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for out of you will come a ruler who will be the shepherd of my people. So they set off on an 80-mile trip to Christmas. The story of the birth of Jesus is a story for all time. In fact, it's such an adventure that never a year passes that it's not retold, what? Millions of times. Well, it was pretty cool last week to watch the kids retell the story. I never tire of that. And I'm always looking for anything that happens. You never know what's going to happen when you put the kids up here, you know? And the story gets told a little different each time, and somebody can completely miss a line, and who cares? The story carries the day, and the core pieces are there, and the children are learning about it themselves. This, in my estimation, is the beginning of the greatest story ever told. It's a story that actually has spawned so many other stories. In 1865, shortly after the Civil War, the pastor of Holy Trinity Church in Boston, Massachusetts, was assisting with a Christmas Eve service. Now, this was a very special Christmas Eve service because it wasn't in Boston, but he himself found himself in Bethlehem. And he was one of the assistants in this place of birth of Jesus. He later would write about his feelings as he described the descending the few miles from Jerusalem, the big city, into this little hamlet, this little place called Bethlehem, on the back of a horse. He said, I remember standing in the old church in Bethlehem, close to the spot where Jesus was believed to have been born, and a beautiful cathedral now is there in that place. And that night, it was a church that was packed with people, and there was singing for hours and hours. Splendid hymns of praise to God. He said it was as if I could hear the angels' voices telling each other of the wonderful night of our Savior's birth. He just was totally changed by this moment. In fact, 2 years later, after he was well back home, in 1867, this pastor, whose name is Phillips Brooks, put his pen to paper and he wrote a very special carol that we often sing during the Christmas season. He wrote, O little town of Bethlehem, how still we see thee lie. Above thy deep and dreamless sleep, the silent stars go by. Yet in thy dark streets shineth the everlasting light. The hopes and fears of all the years are met in thee tonight. Those verses, and I think for many, declare the very heart of Christmas. When we hear them, they do something to us. And I suspect that if you're like me at all, when you hear them spoken and read, it's a little different than when you're even singing them. They have different emotions they elicit. Now Jesus, he wasn't born in the house of royalty, nor was he born in the house of riches. He wasn't born into celebrity or in a house of power. Jesus wasn't born in any of those things. He wasn't born in Jerusalem. He wasn't born in Rome or Athens or another really amazing city of that day, Alexandria. Jesus, he wasn't born into any political, commercial, cultural, educational, or socially significant city of that day. When the Old Testament prophet Micah foretold of the birth of a Messiah in Bethlehem, he emphasizes the lack of significance in the world of this place. Here's what he wrote. He wrote, But thou, Bethlehem, though thou be little among the thousands in Judah, yet out of thee shall come forth unto me that is to be ruler in Israel, whose goings forth have been from old, from everlasting. Bethlehem. House of bread. Bet, house, lahem, bread. So it means the house of bread. And bread is one of the most common things that it's everywhere. Everybody has some form of bread all around the world. The story of Jesus' life, just like the commonness of bread, would be a life lived to remind us that it's out of the common things in life that God makes things happen. And Jesus would remind us of that again and again, right from his very beginning of the calling of these fishermen, these common people who are going to be the army that's going to get this whole thing going that we understand to be the church. They're going to be regular people. Every other rabbi would call these students that were the best of the best, the brightest of the brightest, and Jesus does it totally different, and he is the most strange rabbi we can possibly imagine. He starts calling the people who were already, if they were fishermen, they'd already missed the boat on being a rabbi. They just didn't show any of the promise when they were young that they would be sent off to rabbinical school. They were fishermen. But it's just who Jesus was. And we know that the stories that we're telling as we lead up to Christmas and through this season are stories where characters like shepherds, the common person, are the ones that hear first, not the king like Herod. His cradle, again, a common feeding trough, not a bed. It's so easy for us, I think, for us to get caught up searching for meaning in life in all the wrong places. I don't know if that's happened to you. It's happened to me. This is the way life kind of is, I think. There are so many distractions and so many things that have tinsel and are bright and attractive, and they draw us to them, but they offer us only temporary happiness. But Christmas is a time when we're reminded of what really is most important, how God works through the common, the weak, the broken, the outcast, in the least expected way. If you ever wonder how God will appear in the world, look away from the places of power. Look away from the places of strength. It's likely that the next big work of God will come, once again, out of weakness, brokenness. Archie Abbott had been a long-time pillar of his church. He was a good man. He was a kind man. He was always there helping to make church the best that it could possibly be. In the Sunday school he was working. He was in the choir. He was on the mission team that went out. There wasn't a man, woman, or child who didn't love and appreciate Archie. He wasn't doing what he did for any personal attention or any church political kind of way. He always wanted to build the church up. He listened and he affirmed and he supported, and he simply had this thing that we know it when we see it, called a servant's heart. He was there for all the right reasons. He gave himself again and again and again, sacrificially. Well, Archie, in a sense, wasn't alone. He was married, and he was married to Catherine, and theirs was one of those marriages we all look at and we go, wow. Just in everything they did, it was such an example of what healthy relationship is about. Their partnership was something over 50 years in the making, and as they would say, it was still in the making. It was a beautiful thing. Seeing a couple in their twilight, still visibly in love, and still holding hands through the church when they kind of be together. They were physically, clearly connected to each other. They were kind of throwing glances at each other when they were further apart, and people saw that, and they knew that there were kind words, complimentary words when they were together, or when they were apart. They said wonderful things about each other. You knew that they were best friends. But in a public way, the congregation knew nothing compared to the service on Christmas Eve. Nothing compared to the song that they shared as their favorite. What child is this who laid to rest on Mary's lap is sleeping, whom angels greet with anthems sweet, while shepherds watch are keeping. It was a special carol that the choir did every year, with Archie always singing that next section, that refrain, as a solo. And he sang it to her. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. Haste, haste to bring him laud, babe, son of Mary. How beautiful it was. Just to hear his baritone voice rising above the choir, echoing through the church. And almost as important to hearing was seeing it happen between them. Seeing his eyes locked on hers. Catherine's beautiful expression and her warm, loving connection to him. It was a moment to behold. And all the church anticipated it year upon year, the moment the choir would sing the century-old tune of Green Sleeves, and Archie would solo the refrain. But as time would have it, and nothing we know is forever, in her frailness one day, Catherine, she passed, she died. And as Christmas rolled around next, everyone wondered, will he sing on Christmas Eve? And indeed, he did. just as he always did before, as far back as anybody could remember. And in fact, it seemed that maybe he even sang a little more beautifully. He sang his refrain, and it hung there in the air and kind of up in the rafters as though it was there for the angels themselves. And indeed, in a sense, it was there for one special angel. And you know, by this time, there was no dry eye in the room that year. The tradition lived on for several more years until, again, death would visit that small church family. This time it was Archie himself. The church, particularly the choir, they were uncertain about what to do. Surely no one could replace Archie, not in his work in a day-to-day church world, because of all he did and the things he stood for and the way he shared and the way he cared and the way he would reach out beyond the church to people and bring them in and all the things that he did. But certainly no one could handle the solo at Christmas Eve. It was almost as if the church had experienced the first tremors of its ultimate decline and death. Where's the church going to go now? How can we lose such an important, essential element and still have a future? That was the question people were asking the pastor. Months would pass and Christmas would come closer. And they all knew for the first time in memory their angelic soloist would not gift them with his herald of Christmas news. This is Christ the King. When Christmas Eve arrived, the church was abuzz with people, as every church probably is, or most are. And the congregation, they wondered what would happen when the carol was sung. Well, the choir knew, or so they thought they knew. The director had decided that the refrain on that first verse, the first time through, would go unsung as the organist played Archie's tune in Archie's part. And it would be a wonderful tribute in one sense. And so the service began, and all the usual elements were there. The lights were dimmed, and the wonderful music, and the children were filled with visions of sugar plums and all that. Halfway through the service, they came to that moment that everybody was wondering and anticipating, and the choir stood, and they began their traditional chorus, and word by word, they slowly approached the moment of what they anticipated would be maybe even a sense of emptiness, or it would certainly be something that would trigger in them grief. But as the organ struck that first note to do that organ piece, that section of the refrain, a simple, pure voice rang out in the background of the silence. And it was the voice of a child. A boy. Kid no older than 10. This is Christ the King, whom shepherds guard and angels sing. It was beautiful. But in the absence of any other voices, the little boy suddenly realized that he was singing all alone and all to himself in a sense, and he stopped and he turned and he looked around and jumped into the aisle and ran out of the room. The pastor, he didn't know what to do really, but he turned to the organist whom in the midst of this little cherub surprise had come to a complete halt on the keys. And he says, "Play some carols for a couple of minutes, I'll be back." And out he went out the same door as the little boy. As the pastor crossed the social hall, he saw that there was a door ajar on the other end in a strange sort of way. He knew that was probably where the boy had gone, so down the stairs he went into the youth room, and there curled up in a chair, a soft, comfortable chair, was young Samuel. "What happened up there, Samuel?" the pastor asked. "I don't know," Samuel said. It wasn't at all like it's been other years. In the past, when I sang, there was some old guy that sang so loud nobody knew I was singing. "Oh," How about you and I, we go back upstairs and we sing our song again. Christmas, it's almost here. We have so much yet to share with the congregation. They have to hear how in the midst of a desperate time with desperate needs, no one knew how God would save them. And death had come to the children of Israel, and darkness seemed to be everywhere. But just when all hope was lost, God sent a new voice into the world. And it came in a way that nobody could have ever guessed. So that man and that boy, they went back upstairs. The service resumed. And the pastor, he declared to the congregation, God has indeed answered our prayers. We are blessed once again with the voice of Christmas. The organist began playing. The congregation sang. The little boy did his solo. And the church was reborn. And it had been being reborn over the years before, but nobody even knew. God really does work through small, meek things in unimaginable ways. So today, our message is Merry Christmas from Bethlehem. Amen. Let's pray. Lord, use us in the midst of a dark world, as small as we sometimes feel, as insignificant as our voice, as powerless as we feel we are, Lord, use us in your world. Let us be a small light in darkness. Amen.
Amen. Please stand and join us.
My soul.
Now let's go from this place into the world where Christmas isn't known by all. And let's share that good news of Christmas. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Go in peace. Amen.